Hello there, geometry students. This is Mr. Longo, and I am going to quickly talk about this Unit 1 practice test in case you have decided to actually do it. All the answers are already worked out. There is an answer key on Canvas for you, but I'm just going to quickly talk about some of the answers in case you had a question. So number 1, all it said is which ones are considered straight. That would be a line, ray, and a segment, because remember, a line is a straight line that goes forever and ever and ever in both directions. A ray only goes forever in one direction, and a segment has a start and a stop, but they're all part of a line, so those are the ones that are straight. If you picked point, line, and plane, that's because on one of your quizzes you were talking about the building blocks of geometry or the foundations of geometry. Make sure you read your questions carefully. Number 2, that's just an example of segment addition. All you had to do there was little piece plus little piece is equal to the big piece. And then if you solve correctly, you would have x is equal to 7.5. And then you just have to plug 7.5 back into RS, which is 6x plus 3. And you would get RS is 48. Number 3 was a little bit of a tricky question if you tried to do it in your head. But it did tell you that DAC was 120, and it told you that CAB was 60. Now remember what an angle bisector does. If you were to draw AX and AY and bisect them like I did, you would see that the 120 gets split into 60 and 60, and the 60 gets split into 30 and 30. So if you add 60 and 30 together, you will have a 90-degree angle. And it's pretty cool because that will happen with straight lines if you bisect the angles all the time. With a linear pair, those two will add up to 90. Number 4, you had to be very careful with number 4 because it gave you an endpoint and a midpoint. So if you used the midpoint formula and have 9, negative 7, that means you just used the midpoint formula. But this said M was given. So whenever you are given an endpoint and another midpoint, there's multiple ways to do it, but the way I explain that works the best, that I think, is the little jumping method. So how do you get from 12 to 6? You would subtract 6. So if you subtract 6 more, you are at 0 for your other endpoint. How do you get from a negative 5 to a negative 9? You would subtract 4. So subtract 4 more and you'll end up at a negative 13. So the correct answer to S is 0, negative 13. You did not have to use the midpoint formula. Number 5 is an example of a double midpoint. So if we were to take AD, which is 200 units long, and cut it in half, at C we're at 100 and 100. But then we took AC and cut that in half one more time, which would give you AB and BC of 50. And as you can see, 50 plus 50 is 100, and 100 plus 100 is 200, so that all works out. But it said, what is the length from B to D? And that would be 50 plus 100, so you would have 150. So there's, a lot of things you can do with questions like that. Obviously AB is equal to BC, AC is equal to CD, 4 times AB is equal to AD. There's a lot of different things you can see when you do that. Just remember, when you cut something in half and then cut it in half again, you have a fourth. Naming number 6, it's ray QR. I understand that it looks like it's pointing down and left, but when we name rays, the first letter is the starting or our endpoint, and our second letter is where it's going. So that should actually say QP, not QR. But, my bad. Number 7, 3 non-collinear points. There are many different options, but BCA would be one of them. So would BCD and ACE and EDC. Any 3 points that are not on the same line would be non-collinear. If I said name collinear points, you would pick ACD or ECB. But this said non-collinear. Another name for AD, there were 5 more names for line AD. You have ACCA, DA, CD, and DC. Notice they all have line symbols above them. Remember, you can name a line using any 2 points on that line in either order. Rays are more specific, so are segments. The intersection of EB and AD, if you were to trace both of them, you will see that they intersect at point C. And name angle 1 4 other ways. Now, if you look at angle 1, E is the vertex. I want you to look at my 4 names. E is the second letter all 4 ways. Your vertex must always be the second letter. So you had BED or DEB or CED and DEC. And because if you were to trace those 3 in that order, you would have angle 1. For number 9, this is a question that should not be any surprise to you. The only difference is we changed the word to obtuse. So on our last quiz and on the pop quiz and in the notes, we had an acute angle. If we're working with an obtuse angle, the only difference is it's between 90 and 180. It's not 0 to 90. So we would just have to set 8x plus 10 in between 90 and 180. And you would get an x value between 10 and 21.25. Number 10. That's just an example of vertical angles. So you would set x squared plus 2x equal to 7x plus 24. Whenever you are factoring, you have to get everything over to the same side as x squared. So if you subtract your 7x and subtract your 24, you would end up with x squared minus 5x minus 24. What multiplies to a negative 5 but adds to a negative, or what multiplies to a negative 24 but adds to a negative 5 would be a negative 8 and a positive 3. But notice those are not your solutions. You have to set x minus 8 and x plus 3 equal to 0, or x is equal to 8 and a negative 3. Now, notice I wrote them both down. If you were to substitute it in to either one of these two, you'd get the same answer. So if you substitute in 8, you will get 80. But I asked for angle 1, so you would have to subtract from 180 to give you an angle 1 of 100. If you substitute in the negative 3, you will get a positive 3 for an angle measurement. And either one of them, negative 3 squared is a positive 9 minus 6 is 3, or 7 times a negative 3 is a negative 21 plus 24 is still 3. Now, I did not want that angle. I want angle 1. So we subtract 3 from 180 and we get 177 degrees. Number 11 is just an example of angle addition. So is 12A and B. The only thing that we're doing right there is adding up 2 little angles and setting it equal to the big angle. So in number 11, we don't know the measure, so we had to be given that it was 117. But in number 12, A and B, A is a 90-degree angle because of the box. B is 180 degrees because it is a straight line. So the only one you had to solve was number 11. You can't solve 12 A and B unless you were to use a system, but we were just practicing writing the equation. You were not asked to solve. Number 13 is kind of a neat example because you have a section of a bridge and you were pretty much told to ignore that little section on the left. So if we were to just take those sections of the bridge, we have 5 sections of that bridge. If you look, you have 5 arches. So we had to take the total distance of 489 feet and divide that by 5. And each archway is 97.8 meters long, or feet long. So to get from pillar 1 to pillar 3, you just have to walk 97.8 twice, and you have 195.6. Number 16, the change in y and change of x. That's really just how you get from A to B. I have mentioned many times before you should always work left to right. So to get from A to B, you had to go down 15 and to the right 8. So that's why going down 15 is a negative 15 and going to the right 8 is a positive 8, giving you a slope of negative 15/8. If you could reduce it, you would, but you can't, so you're good to go on your slope. The distance formula is the big ol' square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. Yes, you will have to know your formulas, but all you have to do then is substitute in your x and y values. Notice that the square root, or negative 8 minus 7 is a negative 15 squared, turns into a positive 225. Remember, a negative times a negative is positive. If you just type it in the calculator as negative 15 squared without parentheses, of course it'll tell you that it's a negative 225. You have to wrap it in parentheses or just use your head. 64 and 225 will give you 289, and the square root of 289 is 17. Part E is your midpoint. The midpoint is basically the average of your x's and the average of your y's, which means you just add your x's, divide by 2, and add your y's and divide by 2. So negative 3 plus 5 for your x values is a negative 2, or a positive 2 divided by 2 is 1. And 7 minus 8 is a negative 1 divided by 2 is a negative 0.5, or a negative 1/2. I would accept either answer in decimal or fraction form. And finally, the last part is this whole dividing into a ratio of 1 to 3. Now, this example was given a little bit more challenging because you heard me talk in class a few times about how you can just count the slope. But this one is not possible, because I wanted to offer you another way to do this kind of question. So if you know there's a total of 4 parts, you take your non-reduced slope and divide it by the 4 parts. That means each is a negative 3.75 over 2. See, I wanted it to work out a little bit nasty, so you had a different way to do it, but it would work for an easy problem as well. So now that you know those 4 parts and you have this negative 3.75 over 2, all you would have to do is go from each point and follow the line. You would just go down 3.75 over 2 to get to P. Or if you're going to go backwards, you would go up from B to Q 3.75 and left 2. And that's how you would find P and Q. Okay? So again, I did not want to work out every single question step by step because just talking about it took over 12 minutes. If I did every single one of these, we would be getting close to a half hour with an explanation, and that's too long of a video for a practice test. So anyway, hopefully you found this helpful. Your test is tomorrow, so I hope you're ready for it. This is Longo, and I'm out. See you, bye. If you're actually still listening to this video to see if I said anything else, I would like you, on the top left-hand corner of your test, I would like you to write, "Thank you for the practice video, Mr. Longo." That would be cool. See ya!